Sagittarius. You're drained by family care. Heal exhaustion with zodiac power. There's a quiet kind of tired that doesn't show on your face, Sagittarius, the kind that seeps into your bones, into the spaces between breaths. You've been holding the weight of 2 generations, the calls for help, the midnight worries, the invisible lists that never end. You tell yourself you're strong. You always have been. But lately even strength feels heavy. You used to wake with a spark. Ideas dancing in your mind like flames ready to light the world. Now mornings feel slower. Your optimism, once so effortless, flickers like a candle in wind. You find yourself wondering, when did life become this endless rotation of giving? The woman who used to chase horizons now barely has the energy to chase a good night's sleep. And beneath that exhaustion, something deeper stirs, a quiet resentment, one you rarely name. You love your family beyond measure. But sometimes love has begun to feel like depletion. You used to see caregiving as noble. Now it feels like a tide that keeps pulling you under. This guilt for feeling tired, for longing for freedom, only feeds the cycle of fatigue. But dear Sagittarius, your weariness is not weakness. It's a sacred message from your spirit. The universe is whispering that you've wandered too far from your own fire. It's time to return. You are the archer of the zodiac. Precise, passionate, guided by the stars. Even in chaos, your arrow knows where truth lives. This season of exhaustion isn't punishment. It's an awakening. It's a cosmic invitation to draw back your bow, aim inward, and rediscover what fuels your joy. Astrology becomes your map back to vitality. Through Uranus' call for reinvention and Jupiter's wisdom of truth, you can learn to nurture without self-erasure. The heavens aren't asking you to give less love, only to give from a place of wholeness, not depletion. So tonight, as you sit in the quiet after another long day, close your eyes and feel for that ember within. It's still there, faint but alive. With care, intention, and cosmic alignment, it will rise again, stronger than before. Your exhaustion doesn't define you, Sagittarius. It's simply the shadow before your next dawn. Chapter 1: The Invisible Burnout. When Sagittarius fire turns to smoke. There comes a moment when your laughter starts to feel like labor, Sagittarius. When even joy, that radiant flame that once burned so freely in your heart, feels distant, dulled, unreachable. You smile for your children, for your parents, for the world that depends on your light, but inside you're running on embers. You don't remember when your spark began to fade, only that one day it did. The weight of constant caregiving has a way of cloaking itself as love. You rise early to check on an aging parent's medication, stay up late comforting a teenager's fears, and somewhere between those two lives, your own disappears. You've become the glue that holds generations together. And yet, no one sees the cracks forming inside you. The world praises your strength, but strength without rest becomes a kind of quiet suffering. In astrology, Sagittarius is the eternal optimist, the philosopher who sees possibility where others see limits. But even Jupiter's child can burn out when every day demands emotional labor without reprieve. This is not just fatigue. It's spiritual erosion. When your fire sign energy, so naturally buoyant and adventurous, is forced into cycles of duty, the result is a slow dimming of vitality. It shows up as irritability, brain fog, physical exhaustion, and an ache you can't quite name. Across the world, research tells the same story. In the United States, women spend nearly twice as many hours providing unpaid care as men. In Europe, despite more structured support systems, midlife women still shoulder the emotional and logistical burden of caregiving. Behind those statistics are millions of Sagittarius souls like you, women who were taught that love means endurance, that to stop giving is to fail. But what if that belief is the very reason you're so tired? Here's the cosmic truth. Burnout is not a badge of love. It's the universe's way of saying pause. Your exhaustion is not a flaw. It's a messenger. When your body aches and your mind goes numb, that's Jupiter whispering. You've wandered too far from your own fire. And that fire, your life force, your joy, your creative energy, is sacred. Without tending to it, even your deepest compassion begins to wither. It's time to practice what I call the archer's pause. Imagine yourself as the mythic archer, bow drawn, arrow ready. You never release an arrow without focus, without purpose. Each yes you give to someone else must first pass through this same precision. Ask yourself, do I truly have the energy to give this? Does this serve both them and me? If the answer is no, lower your bow. Breathe. The world will not collapse if you rest. The healing begins not with grand gestures but with awareness, the willingness to notice the moment your body whispers enough. To catch yourself before you cross the threshold of depletion. Burnout doesn't just happen in one big explosion. It builds slowly through the 1,000 quiet times you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. So tonight, do something radical. Admit your fatigue. Speak it softly, even if only to yourself. Let your truth breathe. You don't need to be the endless giver to be worthy of love. You don't need to earn rest through perfection. You are allowed to stop. Close your eyes, dear Sagittarius. Imagine the smoke of your exhaustion curling toward the night sky. Each exhale releasing guilt. Each inhale calling your energy home. Feel the ember of your spirit glowing again, small but steady. You are not burned out. You are burning through illusion. The fire is still yours. It's waiting for you to claim it back. Affirmation. I am learning to pause before I burn. My rest is sacred. My energy is divine. Chapter 2: Uranus transits and the call for innovation and self-care. Change rarely arrives gently, Sagittarius. It storms in, rearranging what once felt certain, much like Uranus, the planet of awakening, revolution, and liberation. And right now, Uranus is calling your name. In astrology, Uranus symbolizes sudden insight, the lightning strike that splits old patterns apart so new truth can emerge. For the weary Sagittarius woman stretched thin by family demands, this is not chaos. It's cosmic intervention. You've spent years doing things the same way. Giving first, resting last. You've mastered the art of efficiency, multitasking through exhaustion, navigating crises with practiced grace. Yet beneath that control lies a quiet rebellion. Your soul is tired of the routine that keeps you small. Uranus comes now as your celestial disruptor, whispering, reinvent, don't endure. When Uranus aligns with Sagittarius energy, the message is clear. Freedom must be reclaimed through innovation. The archer can no longer aim the same way. The old bowstrings are too worn. You're being asked to reimagine what caregiving, work, and self-preservation can look like. And yes, that begins with permission to experiment, to delegate, to do things differently even if it unsettles others. Try introducing Uranian micro-revolutions into your daily life. Instead of collapsing into guilt when you can't meet every need, pause and ask, what would liberation look like here in this small moment? It might mean ordering groceries online instead of doing one more errand. It might mean hiring part-time help, even if it feels indulgent. It might mean saying, I can't talk right now, without apology. Innovation begins in these tiny acts of rebellion. In the moments you choose to value your energy as sacred currency. Astrologically, Uranus often shakes structures so that truth can surface. The caregiving systems you've built, the unspoken agreements, the roles you've accepted may begin to crumble. That's not failure, it's transformation. You're being invited to stop surviving and start evolving. You can't heal in the same structure that drained you. This is the season to harness technology, creativity, and community. Tools Uranus loves. Use apps that simplify your schedule. Connect with online circles of women navigating similar roles. Swap tasks with a friend, she cooks, you babysit. These innovations are not selfish. They're strategies of survival for the modern feminine spirit. Let your Sagittarius curiosity lead the way. Experiment with healing practices that reignite your passion for life. Try a digital detox weekend to reset your nervous system. Replace rigid self-care routines with spontaneous adventures. A walk under a thunderstorm, painting to loud music, or journaling while sitting under the stars. Uranus thrives on surprise. So does your soul. And remember, innovation is not about perfection. It's about authenticity. You're not meant to fit into the same mold that once held your freedom captive. The world changes, the planets shift, and so do you. Your caregiving can become an art form, not a sacrifice. Let Uranus show you how to make care a creative act rather than a burden. Ask yourself tonight, where in my life am I still choosing endurance over evolution? Then listen not to logic but to instinct. Your intuition is Uranus' favorite language. There will be resistance, from family, from society, even from the part of you that equates worth with exhaustion. But rebellion, when rooted in love, becomes revolution. And this, dear Sagittarius, is your revolution. Choosing yourself without guilt, redefining care as partnership instead of servitude. Each time you innovate, you reclaim a piece of your fire. Each boundary you set is lightning striking the old world, making space for new growth. This is what freedom looks like now, not escape but reinvention. Affirmation. I release the patterns that drain me. I welcome change as my ally. I create new paths toward peace and power. Chapter 3 Across Borders. The Global Feminine Weight of Care. No matter where she lives, a suburb in Texas, a village in southern France, or an apartment in Lisbon, the midlife Sagittarius woman often finds herself standing at the same invisible crossroads. The scenery changes, but the story remains familiar. A woman's time quietly dissolving into the lives of others. She is the caregiver, the emotional anchor, the unspoken keeper of family balance. And across continents, her fire flickers beneath the same winds of expectation. In the United States, cultural narratives celebrate self-reliance. Yet when aging parents fall ill or childcare becomes overwhelming, the burden rarely falls equally. It lands again and again in the hands of women. Reports show that American women are more likely than men to reduce work hours or leave the workforce entirely to care for family, often without adequate social or financial support. They fill the gaps where systems fail, using sheer willpower as currency. Sagittarius women, ruled by Jupiter, often approach this with deep moral conviction, believing they can do it all, that optimism and strength will carry them through. But even Jupiter tires when forced to sustain a universe alone. Across Europe, the picture shifts though the weight persists. Welfare systems offer assistance, yet austerity measures and demographic changes are straining these supports. In Nordic countries where social care is more evenly distributed, women still shoulder the emotional load. The phone calls, the remembering, the invisible logistics that no government policy accounts for. Emotional labor, like gravity, cannot be legislated away. And the Sagittarius woman, with her innate sense of purpose and empathy, absorbs it all until her optimism begins to ache. Yet there is something uniquely powerful about your global awareness, Sagittarius. You are the zodiac's traveler, a philosopher of perspectives. You understand instinctively that your personal experience is part of a vast collective tapestry. You can look at these differences, the American exhaustion, the European caution, the Asian filial piety, and recognize that this isn't just your burden. It's a universal imbalance waiting for healing. The act of noticing this, of seeing your pain as part of a larger story, transforms isolation into solidarity. The cosmic wisdom of Jupiter invites you to see beyond guilt into truth. You were never meant to do this alone. The modern world may celebrate independence, but the soul thrives in interdependence, the kind of mutual care that honors both giver and receiver. Across cultures, this understanding is slowly returning, led by women like you who are daring to speak honestly about what it costs to care without support. Seek out these voices, dear Sagittarius. They are your tribe. Online communities of caregivers, workshops led by healers and astrologers who understand the emotional toll of service. Circles of women across oceans, lighting candles for strength beneath the same sky. Every shared story becomes a bridge between worlds, carrying your fire farther than you can on your own. And in these connections, something miraculous happens. Your exhaustion begins to alchemize into resilience. When you listen to a woman in Spain talk about caring for her mother with dementia, or a woman in Canada describing her burnout after years of emotional labor, you feel your own heart soften. You are reminded that this journey is not punishment, it's evolution. The divine feminine across the planet is learning, through this very struggle, to balance compassion with boundaries, giving with receiving. You, Sagittarius, stand at the heart of that evolution. Your fire, your honesty, and your restless search for truth are needed now more than ever. The healing of one woman's exhaustion ripples outward, reshaping entire lineages. You are not just tending to your family, you are tending to humanity's awakening. Tonight, as you look at the stars, the same stars shining above women across continents, know this: you are part of something vast, luminous, and sacred. Your care is not small, it is cosmic. And in this shared story, you are never alone. Affirmation. Across borders and time zones, I am joined by women who understand. Together we rise, not through exhaustion, but through awareness and shared strength. Chapter 4 Fire Sign Renewal. Meditations and Boundaries as Sacred Acts. There comes a moment, Sagittarius, when the soul no longer wishes to be rescued. It wishes to be remembered. Beneath your exhaustion lies not emptiness, but dormant power. It hums softly, waiting for you to listen. This chapter is where you return to that power. Not through doing more, but through burning away what no longer serves your sacred flame. As a fire sign ruled by Jupiter, your vitality depends on expansion, on movement, laughter, adventure, and truth. Yet lately, your flame has been consumed by the constant winds of others' needs. You've been burning without replenishment, offering warmth to everyone but yourself. The universe is now asking you to redirect that energy inward, to tend to your inner hearth. Your fire doesn't need to be loud or wild to be strong. It only needs to be yours again. Start with breath, the first and oldest fire. Sit somewhere quiet, away from the noise of obligation. Feel the air entering your lungs, the slow rise of your chest. With each inhale, imagine golden light filling you. With each exhale, release the heaviness that clings to your ribs, the guilt, the resentment, the invisible shoulds. This is the first fire meditation. The act of remembering that your breath itself is sacred. When practiced daily, this small ritual becomes your re-entry into balance. Then bring in the flame of focus, a practice to reconnect with purpose. Light a single candle and watch the flame dance. Let your gaze soften, allowing your mind to settle. Ask yourself, what truly keeps my fire alive? The answer might not come in words but in sensations, warmth spreading through your chest, a spark of inspiration, a quiet joy. These are your compass points. Follow them. For Sagittarius, renewal thrives in action that feels authentic. So move your body, not out of obligation but out of celebration. Dance slowly under moonlight. Stretch with gratitude. Take long, unrushed walks, letting your thoughts wander as freely as your feet. Fire signs heal through movement, not just physical but emotional. Every step forward clears the ash of burnout and makes space for light to return. But even more vital than motion is mastery of boundaries, the invisible lines that protect your flame. Sagittarius often confuses generosity with self-sacrifice, believing that saying no might extinguish love. Yet boundaries are not barriers, they are sacred architecture. They tell the universe, my energy is precious. My care has rhythm. My yes must come from wholeness, not depletion. To begin, visualize your energy as a circle of fire surrounding you. Steady, warm, impenetrable. Each time someone asks for something that feels heavy or misaligned, imagine that fire flickering. Before answering, place a hand over your heart and ask, is this a true yes, or a fearful one? The more honest your answer, the brighter your flame becomes. Boundaries are also built in conversation. Speak your truth clearly, lovingly. I can't do that today. I need rest. I trust you to handle this. Each phrase is a matchstick of empowerment, lighting your way back to yourself. Remember, Sagittarius, truth is your native language. You were born to speak from authenticity, not apology. Consider joining or even leading a boundary-setting workshop, a gathering of midlife women learning to protect their emotional ecosystems. These circles become sanctuaries where fire signs like you can relearn balance, how to care without collapsing, how to nurture without dissolving. As you share your story, you teach others that self-respect is not rebellion. It is devotion. Finally, end your day with what I call the Phoenix ritual. Before bed, close your eyes and imagine the fire within you glowing brighter. With each breath, see it consuming fatigue, self-doubt, and resentment. Watch as it transforms them into light, warmth, and clarity. Whisper softly, everything I release becomes energy returned. When you wake, you'll feel lighter, not because the world changed, but because you did. You are no longer the flame that burns for everyone else. You are the hearth itself, the steady center from which all warmth flows. Boundaries, meditation, and self-renewal are not indulgences. They are your sacred practice of returning home to your essence. Affirmation. My energy is divine fire. I protect it with love, I tend it with truth, and I share it only from fullness. My boundaries are blessings, my rest is holy. Conclusion, reigniting the inner archer. And now, Sagittarius, as the final light of this journey settles around you, take a deep breath. Feel it, the quiet steadiness beneath your ribs. That is your fire returning. It no longer roars with the wild restlessness of youth, but glows with the wisdom of a woman who has walked through exhaustion, chaos, and care, and found herself again on the other side. You began this path depleted, pulled in every direction by the endless needs of others. Your laughter had grown thin, your optimism heavy with fatigue. But through awareness, rebellion, and sacred rest, you've done something extraordinary. You've reclaimed the rhythm of your own energy. You've learned that tending to yourself is not selfish, it's spiritual maintenance. It's how you keep the flame alive so that your light may continue to guide others, not consume you in the process. Freedom for you now no longer means escape. It means alignment. It's the peace of knowing where your energy begins and ends, of saying yes, only when it expands you, not when it depletes you. You've remembered what Jupiter has always whispered to your sign. That expansion is an inside job. It starts with breathing room in your mind, not miles on a map. Look at yourself, dear Archer. Your bow is steady again. Your aim, refined by fire and experience, points not toward the horizon this time, but toward your own center. You are both warrior and healer, both giver and guardian. You no longer shoot arrows just to please the world. You aim them toward truth, vitality, and balance. The exhaustion that once defined you has become your teacher. Uranus taught you to innovate. Jupiter reminded you to believe. The global sisterhood of care showed you that your story is not isolation but connection. Through meditation and boundary, you built new architecture for your energy, strong, luminous, sacred. So now, when you rise each morning, you do so not from obligation, but from intention. You tend to those you love, yes, but you also tend to the flame that makes you you. You've learned that your joy, your laughter, your curiosity, your fire, is not optional. It is medicine for yourself and for those you care for. As you stand at this new threshold, feel the vastness of Jupiter surrounding you. The stars above are not distant anymore. They are reflections of your own inner light. You are the archer and the arrow, the flame and the sky. Your exhaustion has transformed into wisdom, your chaos into clarity. Whisper softly now, as if speaking to the stars themselves. I am free, even here. I am radiant, even tired. My fire is steady, my care is sacred, my spirit is limitless. And somewhere in that whisper, the universe smiles, because your freedom, Sagittarius, was never lost. It was waiting quietly, in the center of your own heart. Healing affirmation. My exhaustion transforms into power. I give with balance, I rest without guilt. And I rise renewed in the light of my truth.